was a dev interview released at some point while I was off. I think it was around the weekend or late last week, something like that. Something like that. And they talk about how Final Fantasy XIV's toughest battles are designed. So this is the kind of dev interviews I like. The last time I actually saw one, I think was... God, when was it? Was it like Eden's Verse? When they talked about like E7 being over-nerfed and stuff? It was something along those lines. But anyway. There was another one regarding just creating hard content in general. So I'm interested to read it. Man, these fucking ads, dude. Jesus. What the fuck is Fae Farm? Anyway. Whatever. So, I don't know. I mean, I might as well just read the whole article, I guess. We'll read this and we'll get onto the videos. I need water. Water. Alright. It says... Raids and FFXIV are meticulously designed to be the most challenging content in the critically acclaimed MMO. Why do people have to call it that, man? This meme is so annoying, man. Anyway, and the game's lead battle designer tells us how it's done. FF14 is a game of many facets, always remember it for its blah 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 blah, yeah. Toughest grueling content in the game, fine-tuned for sickos who love a ridiculous challenge. I wouldn't call it ridiculous. But then again, I am a raider, so I guess I would say that. Savage Raids take the normal raid bosses to turn up the difficulty and complexity of the gameplay mechanics to unforgiving levels. Sort of a dance routine, very little room for error for all 8 party members, the combat puzzle. That's the case nowadays. It didn't always used to be that way. Specific strategies and quick reaction while maintaining your attack rotation are required. Failure means starting over from the beginning. Having been blessed with a smart and patient raid leader, I'm able to avoid the frustrations that often come with raiding at this high of a level. That's helped me appreciate the nuances of savage raiding. As I always say, like, I think for those scared of it, or those that even mock it for some fucking reason, like, just try it. You'll be surprised. Much deeper understanding of 40 from a tech perspective, able to speak with FF14's lead battle content designer, Masaki Nakagawa, better known as Mr. Ozma. About how raids get made. We talk about everything from the development timeline for squeezing the content into a strict release schedule and staying creative and reasonably challenging over a decade's worth of raid tiers. We covered the intricacies of working in the confines of game limitations. Interesting. How the team made the trickiest raid boss yet in patch 6.4. What boss is that? And the influence of player feedback. What influence? I don't know any. Insights are fascinating for those who touched raids in 14. Even if you haven't, this deep dive into FF14's design paints a much more complex picture for one of many pillars that make the critically acclaimed MMO a special experience. So, there he is, Mr. Ozma. Sheesh. What is this? The clear rates. Okay, nice. We will look at that after. Thank you for that. That's valuable data. So, GameSpot. What does the development timeline look like when you have to design raid bosses? For example, when do you start creating them for upcoming patches? When do testers get their hands on them? How much time do you get for adjustments between normal and savage? Mr. Ozma replies. The early stage of developing raid involved tasks such as deciding the design concept, as well as creating artwork for the boss and scenery. The timeline for these tasks vary depending on the situation. Typically starts about 6 months to a year before release. I see. So it starts like a bit before like the next major patch then. Or even longer even. If it's a year, like maybe he means like before an expansion, or maybe he means like for ultimates or something. But a year, like, I don't know, like, things are, you know, things are tightly made. Like, I think fights are generally well designed, like, on a core level. Like, whether we like the fights or not is, like, you know, that's obviously another, like, conversation, but, you know, like they are generally designed pretty tightly. I do appreciate that. The problem is just like the formula's getting a bit old. As for playtesting, we adjust both normal and savage versions in tandem rather than wait until the normal version is complete. This is because changing something savage might affect the normal version and vice versa. Wait, why? 4 to 8 weeks to repeatedly test and tweak to wait. So, what do you mean it affects the normal version? Are they saying that, like, they create it to be a certain level of difficulty harder? So if they make, like, normal harder, then Savage also needs to be harder and reuse code? I mean, I guess, yeah. I would assume that would be the case. What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned in high-level raid design for expansions and patches through years in terms of balancing difficulty, player enjoyment, and creative ideas? I've been part of FF14's battle content development for over 10 years now, and I've honestly learned a lot. There's a lot I've gleaned from our players through their feedback and live streams, which I'm truly grateful for. When you look back at our first high-end raids, the Coil of Bahamut, compared to the latest raids, there are many aspects where we've improved. This includes making adjustments to difficulty, taking mitigation damage buff timing into consideration. See, like, I think, like, by balancing melee attack range, game design aspects, like time limits and hints for mechanics. Like, here's where I think they falter. Like, from here to here. Like, this is where the problem is. Like, they're thinking too hard about this. And the problem is, with a 2-minute meta now, like, you know, they obviously want to make the burst viable. But I'm glad to have to do mechanics while doing it. Like, P12, both phases is a great example of this. I think that's completely fine. But if the game was more varied, if it's more varied, like... If it's more varied timings, like 60, 90, on 2180, like... I think there was a lot more room to, like, move it around and they wouldn't have to care so much. Yeah, like, it was for players to figure out. Now it's just like the fights have mostly figured it out for us, and it kind of sucks. I don't really like that. I've complained about this for a while. Like, P11 is a great fucking example of this. Like... They designed it in such a way that every 2-minute window, you're just sat there fucking smacking the boss while he does fucking nothing. Like, they don't need to think that hard about it. But then, like, P12 seems to go completely against that because it's mid-mechanic basically every time. Do the same for P10? Well, yeah, they do. You do. But P11 is just like a clearer example in my eyes. Because he just noticeably stops doing basically anything. Act 4 was the best way. I think that was good too, yeah. So, you know, like, in terms of this, I think they just need to think less. Like, taking mitigation into account, like, just make people more dynamically deal with it. Like, when tanks used to have to swap based on CD management and not because a debuff forced them to. As an example. Like, take, like, God Kefka, for instance. Like, that made tanks swap or utilize cover. Like, whereas now it's just like, hee buster, you know you have to swap because you get a debuff every single time. Like, it's... I realize they want to make it more accessible, but they're going too far in the other direction. And as I've always said as well, job and combat design have to work together. And so one does affect the other. So it just feels like they're taking control away from the players, which I find kind of annoying. Hints for mechanics, like things like this I think are very cool. It's lore scenario based depictions in an encounter, I think that's very cool. I love how they do that. I think all the bosses are thematically great. Even if they're shit fights, the themes are always there. And I don't think they ever fuck that up. And like, that's always cool. The problem is, that's a prog experience. Finding that shit out in prog, mind-blowingly cool. Afterwards, when you're re-clearing, boring. Because it doesn't matter anymore. You know, I think they think too hard about it. A specific example would be how simple mechanics of heavy emphasis on reaction time are used very differently from mechanics requiring several decisions at once of lenient time to react. Mechanics of heavy emphasis on reaction time make some players feel like they're not making progress no matter how much they practice, so other players might pick it up right away, which bears resemblance to action games. With a mechanic that requires multiple decisions at once, if players are given plenty of time to think about them, bonds in P10, with practice, they'll feel like they're getting further, and the majority will eventually learn how to solve the mechanic perfectly. Currently, high-end raids in FFXIV are built around mechanics that fall under the latter category. Yeah, like, that's exactly what they did with demoniac bonds. Like, it's quick. The execution is quick, and quite tough at times. But you're given so long to think about it. So, like... you know, like, that to me is, like, really cool. You know, I think they're completely fine to do that. It's why I think P10, like, it does feel more like a third turn, but that's only because the third turn feels like a second turn. If the third turn was actually, like, harder, I think P10 would fit fairly well, because you are given a long time to think about things. I mean, the problem with the third turn is just like the punishment, you know. If one person fucks up, someone else dies. And it spirals. And then it has body checks of sticks at the end of them. But hard to know which is first. I mean, they could use that previous system. Like, think of purgation in P7. With like the Roman numerals, they could use that. That's why it was there. Now they have debuff timers in the party list. They don't have to care about that anymore. I kind of still wish they did, because debuff timers are small, but that's just like an accessibility thing. But, you know, I can see the logic and where they're going. So it doesn't mean we completely avoid mechanics that emphasize reaction time. We incorporate them in moderation to strike a balance. Mechanics of quick reaction time. I guess P9's like fire and ice and stuff. Like, it shows you the symbol and then you need to quickly stand in the right place. I suppose. That's one example, maybe. There's a continual need for new MMORPG battle content that surprises our players and keeps them from getting bored, however, creating something that always involves risk and lots of development resources. Creating something new always involves risk and a lot of development resources. Conversely, battle content of your typical mechanics have the advantage of providing a stable level of entertainment with little risk and cost. When I lead my team, I provide direction based on maintaining the overall balance between fresh and typical content. I will say I don't think they always get this right, but again, Anabasios has been a good tier. P8S from patch 6.2 raid tier features mechanics Mr. Ozma calls sports meets phases. Huh? I don't know what that means, but okay. For example, in P9S and P11 built around familiar mechanics, so we challenged ourselves to introduce new ideas in 10th and 12th. I believe we gained the sense of balance from all that we've learned during our many years of operations with various feedback. I mean, I must say it right now, man, like, these familiar mechanics are getting very boring. Fucking pairs, stack, and spread, like, it's tired. You just run around. Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, I mean, like, that makes sense. You know, they have incorporated a lot more movement this expansion, which, you know, I know that's why they've made, like, casters more mobile and shit, but they've forgotten about the fact that, like, Fizz range, like, served a purpose for this very reason. But now that purpose is lost because everything else can move so easily. And melees don't lose uptime. This is where they're fucking up. I understand why they do it the way they do. Again, as I said, combat and job design, like, sort of, like, working together, but... like, it's just... I don't know, man. You know, they need to start thinking of something new. Like, P10 was very cool in concept, but it is still a lot of stack and spread. Any linkers? Yeah. Hang on. Holy link. There's a Twitter thing because I copied it from there. But anyway, moving on. What are some raid mechanics you wanted to do but couldn't because of design limitations, either from a technical game engine perspective or having to adhere to things like arena shape, 2-minute burst windows, downtime, etc.? Oh, here's a question. The development team always creates battle content under numerous limitations. The number of ideas we've waived might rival the number of stars in the sky. To give a specific example, dynamically moving the arena is an idea that was raised multiple times by different battle content designers. These were ideas you might see in action games, such as swinging the floor back and forth like a pendulum, fighting on the back of a flying dragon, or battling atop 2 moving ships. Sorts of ideas involve dynamic movements of collision that would normally be unfeasible under FF14 systems. We've cleverly worked with our given limitation to create arenas like Leviathan's rocking boat, diamond weapons, dual flying platforms. Okay, but like, it's not the same thing. Like, it's like, the illusion of movement is not the same as movement. You know? I would love to, like, I mean, they've even done it before. Like, think of Shinryu and his tail phase in the extreme. It is possible. And, you know, I assume, like, running along like a dragon's back is, like, a Deathwing reference, probably. You know, like, I don't think it's impossible. Yeah, I mean, I guess Sophia does it well. Like, you know, I've always said that I love, like, arena dynamics. Even if it's done in a simple way, like, I really enjoy it. I really enjoy that. A 120-second burst windows and the limitation of player uptime on bosses are aspects where we've received lots of player feedback and on lots of trial and error. We tend to run into issues of encounters that temporarily prevent players from targeting the boss. Sorry, I'll zoom in a bit, actually. Sorry. Oh, God. Just so you guys can, like, fucking read it. Okay, here we go. Wait. I broke the images on the fucking page, man. Hang on. Okay. There we go. I can zoom in this far, at least. Sorry, I'm actually like brain damaged when it comes to fucking scrolling a web page. Jesus Christ. Undergone lots of trial and error. We tend to run into issues of encounters that temporarily prevent players from targeting the boss. We've significantly reduced the frequency of bosses becoming untargetable. We've received lots of feedback regarding this, primarily from our players outside of Japan. Yeah. I have the impression that more players enjoyed resolving mechanics while attacking the boss, and I feel the same way when I play the raids myself. So a lot of bosses designed for maintaining uptime nowadays. Okay, right. Like, yes, you are correct. Yes, like, you are somewhat correct. However, you have done it better. It's called O12S and O8S. Where melee's had to also optimize uptime while still doing the mechanics. It's all well and good having a boss targetable while we do mechanics. Yes, that's great. But you know what's not great? Having a hitbox the size of, like, the fucking sun. Act 2 and P4. Like, you know, I see what he's saying. And, like, they're reducing downtime to make our burst better. But, like, why don't you just... Oh, my God. I don't know. I'm so conflicted. Because, like, you know, I see what he's saying. But, like, they're going too far in the other direction. Like, they're just making it too free. When, again, they've done it better before. It's called Stormblood. Like, why did that have to change? That said, certain mechanics can only be expressed through these sports meet phases, so keep an on strike good balance. So, like, this is like ultimates, right? But man, like, P8S didn't have to be a wall boss. It could have just been in the fucking middle. And you attack him while you do Hello World. Like, I don't think that was... Sorry, while you do High Concept. I don't think that was too much to ask. Because with P8S, you ended up with this situation where all the mechanics occurred in the front half of the arena. And the back was basically useless, apart from High Concept. So, like, that to me sucks ass. Like, you can just so clearly see they're just catering to uptime. And it kind of blows. We just fuck all for the rest of the mechanic. Yeah, like, you know, that could have been, like, ways to get uptime. It's like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but like Rampant. You could figure out strats and ways to get better uptime. Like, fuck EAS, but Light Rampant is a good example of them doing it better, more recently than Stormblood. And then that way, Fizz range would have more of a purpose again. And, like, casters could be returned to having to cast more. Like, it's just like... Arena and P12 2 is 75% the size of Phase 1. Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. It's just, like, less obvious. Really figuring out? Well, that's what I mean. People figured out uptime strats. And if you had big balls and were prepared to get kicked and blacklisted from parties for greeting and fucking it up, you could even do Ilya strat full uptime. It was possible. It was just extremely dangerous. So, you know, I don't really... Like, I'm so conflicted about this. Because, like, yes, you do that. But then you don't in places that you should. And then when you do, it's just, like, too free to hit the boss. So then we run into this issue of DPS checks existing because they're expecting you to hit the boss a lot. But then due to all the variants in this game, your overall damage can do this. With so much fucking, like, crit variance and shit. Like, which then makes balancing more difficult. And it makes you feel ripped off when you lose due to factors that aren't really your fault. And that's why Anabasios, I at least surmise, doesn't really have DPS checks, and they went hard on mechanics. You know? Anyway, I digress. Some consider P10 the toughest instance in the Pandemonium series, and it's quite different to the rest of the raids. What was your approach to getting creative with it? For the 10th circle, our goal was to create something that would vividly remain in the minds of all players. It certainly did. P10 smile. A big reason for that was because the namesake of the raid series, Pandemonium, was going to appear as a boss. To achieve our goal, we took a two-pronged approach. First, we had an idea to incorporate spiderweb-like mechanics. But by doing so, we had the grounds to create unconventional mechanics from our initial design stage. Second concept was to make the encounter more challenging than previous second-turn raids to give our players a strong sense of accomplishment. I wanted to design a powerful encounter befitting the name Pandemonium. And as I've said, they did extremely well at this. I think P10 is one of the best fights they've designed in quite a while. It's definitely good. Hitting the tank LB3 during Harrowing Hell and P10S is common. Just to play it safe. Congrats on getting to Harrowing Hell without having to heal LB Bonds 3. After its release, I saw many of our players on social media and live streams comment it was their favourite second turn boss. Even saw people praising it as a masterpiece in their videos and blog articles. It made me truly happy. On the flip side, others hated it was harder than any other second turn raid. Again, I think this is relative. It's fine to be hard if the difficulty curve is like fitting, but it's not, because the third turn is a wet fart. And they've clearly changed their philosophy on like the first two turns being more accessible than the last two. Yes, I too enjoy being hard. Be hard with me, chat. While I believe that in many ways we achieved the goals we set when we started working on the tier, the resulting difficulty was a bit harder than we anticipated. We certainly set out to make the second turn more challenging than the previous one, considering the players attempt the raid of strangers and party finder. Damage of Harrowing Hell, one of the boss's late stage attacks, was a bit too harsh. No, it wasn't, man. No, it wasn't, man. It forced people to like manage their shit so they had stuff to heal with and mitigate with. It was not too hard, man. It was definitely surprising. It was definitely surprising to have that much damage output in a second turn, yes. But if we're not under the premise that like a first and second turn are meant to be more forgiving, then I think it's completely fine. Thank you for changing that up. I think that's interesting. It's not that bad. Fuck me, if I could fucking heal it. Anybody can. So no, I don't agree with this at all. No, I hope... I hope that they don't take this to heart. And they realize that people just need to get good, man. You know, it's like kitchen sinking, but the party instead of the tanks, you know? Cover from any later mistakes, yeah. I mean, to be fair, have you seen how many people choke the last bit after? Spoiler alert, it's a lot. So, you know, I don't think this is too difficult. Like, it's difficult to learn, and it's difficult to perform. But I think they balanced it well with a lenient DPS check, the 40-second debuff timers that gave you plenty of fucking time to, like, look at shit and, like, internalize shit. And I think overall, I think they balanced it incredibly well. You know, obviously I don't want everything to be a wall boss. What I said earlier was a joke about positionals and shit. But, you know, if they make more stuff like this, with this kind of philosophy, I think they can do really well. Because it also didn't really feel like it was looping too much either. It felt fresh still. Apart from the end, obviously. But even that was like fairly quick fire. The encounter had both great points as well as some room for improvement, but of all the raids I've worked on, I feel we succeed on creating something quite interesting. I will be reflecting on the areas I can improve to leverage them in the next opportunity to create even more interesting bosses in the future. Good. That's good. What's your favorite thing about watching the community take on new Savage raids when they come out, and have you been surprised by strategies you didn't think of? After the raids are released, I like watching live streams of players enjoying themselves figure out their way to a clear. Our players are amazingly skilled, and I'm always surprised how quickly they figure out mechanics and get through encounters. Yeah, wait till you see the ones that don't stream. It's especially interesting to see videos of players who restrict themselves even further, despite how difficult high-end content can already be. It's always a surprise to see players find clever ways to clear different party compositions, like only having one healer, all tanks, or only 7 players. Good. I mean, not much to say about that. Like, just... I'm glad you watch us, but like... And please keep listening to us as well. Has Mr. Ozma been in this stream? Honestly, part of me hopes not. I'm gonna be real with you. I am gonna be real with you. I hope not. Because if he reads my chat, Jesus Christ, I'm getting banned. I'm just kidding. I love you guys. What the fuck is that? Oh, it's your own emote. Having designed so many high-level bosses, what can we expect in the future to keep challenging us in new ways? I'd like to thank everyone who enjoys FFXIV's high-end raids. In Endwalker, we released 3 raid tiers of Pandemonium and 2 ultimate fights. Dragon Song's Reprise and Omega Protocol. Okay, but Dragon Song's Reprise was the Shadowbringers ultimate. Let's be fucking real here. Let's be real here. Remember you said 70% done? And we received so many comments from our players via social media. I've also had the pleasure of watching many of you stream your raid progress in real time. There's been times where I succeeded and other times where I fell short, but all of you have taught me so much of each experience. I'll keep giving my all to deliver the feelings of excitement and achievement that can only be experienced through high-end raids. And you'll be hopefully you'll be looking forward to more raids to come. You know, I like Mr. Ozma, man. Like, you know, he is an advocate for things being hard. I don't think he always hits the mark, but I do appreciate the, like, all the raids they put out. This is the thing that keeps me playing more than anything, of course. Without this, like, I'd be despairing pretty fucking hard, let's be honest. And so would many of you. You know, when I talk about my criticisms around, like, the job design and the combat design and the encounter design, like, it is never that I think they don't work hard. It is never that I think that they think they know better. It is that they need to realize the hole they're digging themselves. Especially in regards to job design. And how it affects how they make fights. Like, that's the problem. They do more dev blogs about DSR on top. I don't know if they did one about top. I think they did one about DSR at some point. I'm not sure though. You know, it's weird, but like, you know, I appreciate this interview, man. Like, it's always nice to know. I was hoping they'd go into a bit more detail about like each turn, but you know, it's whatever. Yeah, like, it's a good interview, and you know, it's good to hear communication from the devs. And it's also good to hear they do listen to people outside of Japan. The problem is, it feels like a lot of it gets ignored because apart from these interviews, we don't hear fucking anything. Like, at all. Rack chat? Why do you keep saying rack? Like, bro, I'm reacting. Is this not reacting? I'm reacting to a fucking interview. What do you mean? It's just in text form. Shut the fuck up.